Hello, everyone. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and doing well. I welcome you all to Writerly Life's first ever publishing spotlight session, and I'm honored to have you, the press team, with me. So, without much ado, let's get started. First, introducing Arpita. She founded Yoda Press in 2004. Before that, she worked for HarperCollins India, Sage India, and OUP India. Having a master's in Islamic Studies from SOAS, University of London, she currently teaches creative writing as an adjunct faculty in Ambedkar University and as a visiting faculty in Ashoka University. She's also an executive board member of Publish Her, womeninpublishing.org. She writes on book culture, gender, and bibliotherapy for various journals, periodicals, and platforms regularly. Welcome, Arpita. Then Ishita. Ishita is a senior editor and rights manager. She has been with the company for over 5 years. She has a master in psychology and in publishing. She dons multiple hats. She edits manuscripts. She oversees design and production, hiring of interns and employees, and she also reviews manuscripts at YP Publishing Services. Tanya is an editor. Apart from copy editing, she handles publicity and promotions at Yoda Press, the Yoda Pin podcast, the Yoda Press workshops, and license with bookstores for orders. She has been here for over 3 years now. Gitanjali is an intern. She's a history student. She started working with Yoda in March 2021, and she's helping out with graphics, proofreading, editing, and manuscript reviews, and even marketing sometimes with an exclamation mark. And her interests are political economy, gender, and labor. Welcome, all of you. And it's really been an honor. I'm not saying just because of the heck of saying it. And first an all women team, and really excited about discussing things regarding publishing books and stuffs with you all. So first, Arpita, my question to you is, it's been 17 years, all right? So can you give us a glimpse of what this journey of publishing has been for you?
Yeah, first of all, 17 years, which means I'm a fossil. But as I always like to say, but I think my team has heard me say that so many times they don't even find it funny anymore. But really, I mean, it's going to be more and more like this. I know I'm going to be working with younger and younger people, which is one part of being a fossil that I really love. I mean, now I'm working with people who were born, after I sort of, or just before got into publishing, or just after I got into publishing. So it's like, it's kind of scary at times, but being with them and working with them is a fabulous experience. So first of all, um, that the experience of working with 98%, I think, women editors and colleagues over the last 17 years. We've had one or two men, but has been uh, very rewarding and a blessing for me. I felt supported, understood,
I
and
lost you in between. Sorry.
uh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was saying that I've felt really supported and loved, and kind of really um, sort of empowered by the people I've worked with for these 17 years. Um, that's one of the big pluses. It can be one of the big pluses in an indie publishing or in an indie setup, if you want it to be a strength. If you want, a very different kind of a setup where people come and go and flit in and out and don't really mean much to you, and you're the kind of, then that's different. That also happens in indie setups a lot. But I think in my ecosystem, it was very important to have long lasting relationships. And I was very blessed to get them. Um, Apart from that, when I started Yoda Press, it was a very, very, um, very unfamiliar kind of an idea for most people in my industry, that someone who should, someone that young should start I mean, I had a business partner then. We were both in our late 20s. And that was a big sort of, considered like, ye kaise ho sakta hai? Because even the women and men who had started indie setups before us, they had done that at a time when they were older and more mature, more experienced. So in a sense, now for you all, it seems okay because you're so used to 20-year-old startups, right, in various businesses. But for us, at that time, we were really looked upon as, these people are on, they're making a big mistake. They don't even know it. What do they think they're doing? They're kind of rediscovering, reinventing something which should not even be touched. So that was a very difficult time, therefore. Although, yes, we still got a lot of goodwill from a lot of people for whom I'm extremely grateful, and we were able to make a start. But the first 5 years were hellish. I mean, they were the sort where every day I would come home and weep and say, I've got to shut it down next week. Because nobody wanted to really allow it to even become a brand, you know. Also, we made the decision that we wanted to follow up. We wanted to build lists like sexualities, like popular culture, like urbanism. Now, again, these are buzzwords now. But at that time, people were like, what the hell is all this, and why should we be giving this any sort of space or mileage? So that part of it, again, was very, very hard. And at that time it felt like to make oneself be heard via one's books was a very hard journey. But uh, with time somewhere, and I really credit you millennials for it, our audience, once the millennials could start paying for our books, I think um, things started changing for Yoda Press. And the rest is, well, whatever it is. So, Saurabh, I know I got carried away and we are short on time. So, you need
No,
to, we're not
so
short on time, but
we are
yeah,
not
but I
short
can
on
go
time.
on and on and on. That's such a, it's like the kind of a question where I can talk for the next 2 hours. So, maybe
Absolutely.
in
17 years
bits
merit
and
this
pieces,
longish answer.
bits and pieces is better, I think. Yeah.
17 years do merit such a long answer. So that's completely valid.
That, yeah.
And we can come back to it anytime. So that's there. I'm going to pose the same question to all of you as well because you have a journey too with Yoda Press. So, and would like to know from your lens how you have seen it develop, grow, and and how your experience has been. So we start with the youngest member, Gitanjali.
Hi. Okay, so I think by now, I mean, I don't know if I'm like overstepping or whatever, but I think I've been one of the interns who stayed longer. And yeah. And I mean, I started in March and I just thought that, this is something that I would do while I'm preparing for my entrances and preparing for my exams, and, it would be a very good distraction from everything. Um, but then I don't know, everything fell apart, and working for Yoda and, the support that Arpita, Tanya, and Nishita have given has been so important even when my grandfather was sick. I mean, that was like such a weird time for me because even as a 21 year old, I've never experienced something like this. I mean, all of those things like experiencing grief and all of that became a part of like my Yoda Press journey. And it's just been fantastic, like the things I've got to do, the things I never thought that I would be doing this regularly, reading some very interesting manuscripts. uh, it's been it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. And I miss Arpita's dog a lot.
Tanya. Yeah.
Yoda is my first job, basically. I mean, I was still doing my master's when I applied for an internship. I think I didn't just apply, I harangued Ishita for months before she finally sent me a reply. And and since then, although it seems like it was yesterday that I became a part of their team, it's been over 3 years, and I have grown so much as a person. I was 22, and I didn't know anything. I had to be taught so much, and that takes a lot of patience when you come in an industry like publishing. Um, you know, nobody can teach you editing per se. It can only come with how much you practice. And giving someone that space to constantly practice and, without hovering, without sort of, second guessing their decisions. Um, I think that to me felt really, really important. So much so that, after a couple of months had passed and Ishita asked me if I want to stay on for longer and, from become a trainee, from an intern. I thought, yeah, why not? Because I want to continue learning. And, it's not just editing that I learned at Yoda Press. Like Gitanjali said, you do a lot of things that you thought you'll never do. And one of such things was designing graphics on Canva, which I had no clue about. And I just watched Ishita, I just watched what she did. And I thought, okay, these are the aesthetics that, go into making a graphic. So let me get into that. And then I did that. And then Arpita wanted to start a podcast. And I was an Ensu Cutlet. I love podcasts. So, I mean, I quickly, I Googled the best pirated software to sound edit. And I downloaded that. I went on YouTube and how to edit sound. And I learned all of that. And these are the skills that, they're just going to add to my work. So wherever I go, I have these skills that, I could develop here, in comparison to being pigeonholed into a department and not learning anything ever. And and I've seen Yoda also grow with me. So as the years have passed and new developments have happened in the industry, new ideas have come into place, language has evolved, and I've seen that happen with every consecutive book that we published. How language has changed, how ideas have changed, and that I find really fascinating because I don't see that a lot. With a lot of publishing houses who tend to sort of stick to the ideology with which they were established initially, and they don't really move ahead or look beyond uh, that. So yeah, that's been my experience at Yoda.
That's wonderfully put, Tanya. Ishita?
Uh, Yoda Press was not my first job. I started my journey in publishing started at DK Publishers in Noida, and I worked in the digital media department where I was given the post of assistant editor, but I didn't actually get to do any editing because it was digital media, and that's not what was exactly required over there. And I learned a little bit of digital publication and things like that over there, but my learning curve became flat very, very quickly. Within 3 or 4 months, I wasn't doing anything new, and I felt like it was at a time when I should be learning everything I can possibly can about this industry. I wasn't getting to, and I decided to go for a master's in publishing, which I did in the UK. And my master's was of a nature where, at least in the first semester, they teach you about every aspect of publishing. They don't stick you in one category, either editing or production or anything like that. They cover everything, at least briefly. They even teach you things like design, softwares, uh, etc., etc. When I came back after that master's, even though I had that knowledge, I still didn't want to go into a setup where I would, again, like Tanya said, be pigeonholed. my strength was editorial, but I wanted to use the other skills and also wanted to learn as much as possible about publishing as an industry. Not be skilled in only one section and move on in that, though plenty of people do that and they do well. So I was actively searching for, when I came back, I was actively searching for work in a small publishing house where I'd get to work in all the departments and, dip my finger in every pie. And at Yoda Press, I have done that, and how. There is nothing related to publishing that I have not done, and not just dipped my finger, but steeped myself completely in it, whether it's production, it's sales, finance, everything. And I think only a place like Yoda Press could have made that possible, where you're thrown into the deep end, but with the support of your colleagues. And because we do so many things in house that you have no choice but to learn really, really fast. And I thrive in that kind of environment, I found, after coming to Yoda Press. And another thing that probably might be different for me than it was for Tanya and Gitanjali is that when I first joined Yoda Press, there was only one other employee apart from me, and there was one intern. I joined as a trainee. And so once the intern left, it was me and the other person. And that person was set to leave in a few months as well. So because of that, I took on a managerial role very quickly. I think I had been at Yoda Press for less than 2 years when I was already, hiring or participating in hiring interns, giving them work, supervising them, teaching them, that sort of thing. And I don't think that could have happened in any other place. In any other, and even a slightly bigger organization, I would have had to be there for at least few more years, 5 to 6 years before I was in a managerial position, which was already happening in 2 years at Yoda Press. So that experience of teaching someone what you know through teaching with, like Arpita was stressing, how much you learn from the younger people around you, because often when you have a certain knowledge set, it doesn't grow because you've already absorbed all of that. But when you have people who are entering into the industry or are who are bringing their own skills, then there is nothing like that to learn even more.
Excellent. So so I guess you should do away with your titles, guys. You should I don every hat. Arpita, I want to ask from you, because many publication houses do have this. Do you have a publication strategy? What is your publication model? How do you source material, and do you rely on agents to give you, a sure shot, publishable content? So I know multiple questions, but yeah.
Saurabh, in a lot of ways, that was decided by the fact of how we started, which was making this decision to develop lists which actually didn't exist at that time, right? Apart from the fact that there were no agents in our ecosystem at all at that time, right? I'm talking 2005, 2004. So, so in that sense, and it was not just that I decided that these were particular lists that I wanted to go for, which were not being done by other publishing houses, mainstream or independent. Of course, that was the reason of starting something like this. But it was also the fact that necessitated commissioning and not acquiring, if you know what I mean in terms of the nuance, the difference, which is what excited me. So I know a lot of commissioning editors, especially now that there are so many more agents in the ecosystem. A lot of commissioning editors now do depend a lot on some very fine agents because they are more comfortable with acquisitions. But I remain more excited with about commissioning. So my sense, even though I have to tell you the truth, I mean, people have a much clearer sense now of what is the sort of work we publish. So first of all, let me answer that question. So what I look for essentially, of course, as you know, now we've tried our hand with every kind of genre, so in that sense, now there was a time when we stuck just with narrative nonfiction, perhaps in the first 10 years of our existence. But after that, we opened it up to fiction. We've done some very important graphic books, and there are 3 more coming out. Well, one is out, the Shaheen Bagh one, and 2 more coming out this year. And we consistently do some splendid poetry every year. At least there's one major title. And we've done a couple of young adult books as well. That's the only genre where I think I've been a little more cautious than others, because I do feel I have a lot to learn there. And there are many people who are doing much better work. So genres we've been very eclectic with. But for me, what's really, really important is, of course, there is a sense of leaning towards, storytelling sort of strength, even if it's something academic or semi-academic that we publish. That is very important. And on the other side, when we are publishing something very popular, and the political in it has to be very, very strong. So it's a very fine kind of a marriage, you can say, between good storytelling and the political. That excites me. And anything mainstream, there are many people who are doing a lot of that and throwing a lot of money at it. So why do you need us? We like to go for narratives and stories which tell a different story, which give a different account, which pick a different voice, and we would like then to spotlight it. That has always been our raison d'etre. So in that, keeping that in focus, we have evolved. And yes, we have reinvented ourselves, even in terms of what we've published. For instance, I was very clear when that after 377 was dropped and homosexuality was decriminalized by the Supreme Court, I knew that our LGBTQ list till then had been a very activist list, which had gone hand in hand with the movement in India. A lot of my authors were people who were very major, activists in the movement. But after that point, I did feel that we really need to now focus more on thinking of a situation where we do many, many books which have queer voices. Why should it just be a queer list? The fact of the matter is that queer voices should be everywhere. The queer standpoint should be everywhere, right? So I think in that I think we have actively we have talked about that. Ishita, Tanya, and I, and particularly Tanya has a very clear sense about it. Particularly, I think both Ishita and I'll admit we've learned from her in that regard, and we've tried to make sure that we are now developing. I mean, of course, LGBTQ books are there, but we're developing our larger list represents queer voices whatever we do. So that evolution has also been important, as much as the original focus has remained. Keeping these two things in mind, Saurabh, there's no agent really who you can imagine, because running a literary agency is tough, and it's a very commercial game. And I have very good friends who are agents. I know how it works. So for us, therefore, it's really been authors figuring out that their book will have a home in Yoda Press like no other. Right? Ishita, Tanya, I think a lot of people write into us like that, right? Saying, we would rather go with you than anyone else, even though you're small and, independent. And the other is the commissioning aspect remains. Constantly brainstorming to think, okay, what do we want to do next? And some big books like this Bhagat Singh graphic biography that is going to come out, the first graphic biography of Bhagat Singh by Group Sandhu, which is coming out on our Simon & Schuster joint imprint. that was purely commissioning based, you know. So a lot of very, very cutting edge books have been commissioning based. So yeah, it's a very commissioning driven business model with that focus in mind, and yet a lot of space for evolution in the way I gave you an example.
Well, that's how I
Does that answer
discovered.
your question?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how I discovered Yoda Press because I was in Mayday bookstore, and that's how I asked that person who was there that I only want you know books on queer subjects or queer authors, and that's how I got The Boatman by John Burbage. That was my introduction to you know a queer literary scene as now I can say in India. And when I Googled and I checked, so that's how I bought, and then I wrote to you for review copies going forward. And I say it with as much pride as I can take, despite being officially part of Yoda Press, that I love the publishing house so much for having so many distinct queer voices published throughout its journey. And I don't think people had that list, as you say, very strategically in mind, or even with a sense of, as you say, that commissioning mind that I do need to do this because I really believe in it. So kudos to you guys for that. And that was my introduction to queer literature. Yeah, because I never found any major publisher going after a queer subject like you guys have done it. And I am doing a listicle article, and right now I have books with me from Yoda Press, like 4 or 5 of them, which I'm struggling. Like I should keep 2 or 3 of them because people see that a particular publisher is dominating that list, and so yeah, that's there because I put that's why I said right, I go ahead with the disclosure first. So anyone who's watching, I'm not getting a cut. So and it's just purely heart. So
We couldn't give you a cut even if we
Yeah,
wanted
there's nothing
to.
to
Yeah.
cut from.
No,
exactly, and that's why I love
no
them.
cut is possible only with
Yeah,
our
for love
kind
there
of
is no
business.
cut. That's it. For love
A
there is
lot of
no
love,
cut.
tremendous mutual love and admiration.
And one thing I really want you to elaborate from your answer, though it was already an elaborative answer. When you said that what we do is a blend of commissioning and a good story, I want to ask you what is a good story, and what does good look like to you for a work that you have? What is a good story, and what does good look like to you?
So, I mean, first of all, what's really important in terms of storytelling for me is a story that has that sense of freshness and newness that I haven't heard before, or I have heard in very, very non-mainstream kind of milieus. And I would like to bring that from that niche into our niche, which is a little wider, because we do have overlaps with mainstream discourses. So, first of all, the newness of it, the originality of it, but also how much it engages the attention of the reader. I think that is very, very important. Without that, it's very difficult to turn it into a book. Sometimes the freshness of it itself makes it engaging, and the rest we can do with our editorial acumen because we are very editorially driven. But sometimes it needs a little more from authors. So I think the time when my commissioning work, unlike that of many other commissioning people in bigger publishing houses, is not just about going and meeting someone and saying, okay, I have this idea and I would like a book on this, and let's sign on the dotted line, perhaps pay in advance and get the manuscript from them. A lot of the times, because I'm working in untried and untested waters or such voices, I have to really handhold them through the process of developing the idea into a manuscript. And it takes time, it takes patience, it takes love. And I've been told this by CEOs of publishing houses with whom I have joint imprints, for instance, that this is something my commissioning editors really don't have. They don't have the time or resources for. And I always keep quiet and I laugh to myself because it's not like we are flush with resources, but it's the only way I know how to work, you know. Because very often, uh, a good story is it's like an unmined kind of a raw material, and you have to chisel it and you have to, work on it in order to make it shine. And that is very important at Yoda Press. Very important. Uh, I think we don't expect a lot of our manuscripts to come in absolutely print ready, editorially kind of sound or anything. We work a lot with our authors to even develop the manuscripts themselves, as I said earlier, and then work very hard on the editorial aspects. So yeah, so that's what I mean by a good story. Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, Ishita, I was coming to you. And yes, you can add to it, and just whatever you want submitting as a reply. I would also want you to touch on this nurturing aspect, right? Because you've been here for a longer time. I want you to touch upon that nurturing aspect of a piece of document. Yeah, go ahead.
While Arpita was talking about, she was, focused on the commissioning aspect of it. For me, a good story, see, it goes without saying we're all avid readers, right? We've spent most of our lives reading anything we can get our hands on, and it's the same for me. But also because there is that editorial bent of mind. Anytime I
Absolutely.
come across any kind of written piece of information, I automatically start correcting it in my head.
Yeah,
Like my family is completely annoyed with me. They refuse to take me to restaurants because I keep correcting menus or rather pointing out mistakes in menus. But when I come across a manuscript and in the process of reading it, if I forget to edit, if it engages me so much that I start mentally ignoring any typos or errors or etc., and just think, no, 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 that can be fixed easily. No, 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 that we can fix. That's when I know that it's caught my attention to such a degree that yes, this is something we need to work on, and if we can, to publish. And on your question about nurturing, nurturing is actually a very good word to use, because what I realized over the years is that for an author, giving their manuscript to us is like handing over the baby or handing over their baby that they've raised to a certain point, and now it can't, they can't help it anymore, and it needs help from us, which is why often authors are very anxious, that, oh, when will the editing be done, what form will it take, how many copies will you print, etc., etc., and all of that is very relevant. So the nurturing comes in. We have a policy of, we don't just take the manuscript and start editing without in keeping the author involved. Like Arpita said, we work a lot with the author. So when a manuscript gets assigned to any of us, the first thing, even before we start editing, the first thing we do is to make contact with the author. Obviously, we've already been in touch with them and discussed the manuscript, etc., etc. But from the editing point of view, to let them know we've started editing. This is how long we anticipate it will take. These are some of the things I'm focusing on, etc., etc. So from the beginning, you get the author's trust, and the manuscript becomes like it doesn't remain just the author's baby. Then we become co-parents to the manuscript, if I can beat that metaphor to death.
great. So Tanya, from you, I want to ask, because as Arpita has mentioned, that you really have an edge over sensing a good queer narrative. So I would want to ask the same questions in, with regard to this? How do you sense a good queer story? Because how something that somebody must have read very candidly, as they say, because they hide behind this word to say anything transphobic. Uh, so they do that and end up writing a very shitty piece. And we were discussing yesterday about a legendary author who happens to have written this pathetic book, and that book makes into all listicles, across platforms, hailing it as one of the best books by an Indian author. So yeah, how do you sense that good queer narrative, and where do you draw that line and still stay sensitive on that part? As Ishita said, that they really handhold people and help that baby to interact, you know, with this world, with this brutal world. So yeah, how do you do that?
Okay, in my opinion, this will come across as very controversial, but I feel that queer narratives should come from the queer community always. At least, as Arpita what said it, that at least the first narrative should come from the community, and maybe then the rest of us can sort of build our own. Um, so that's one thing that I'm always sort of, because you don't want a person to out themselves when they are out there trying to publish a book, right? You don't want them to from the get-go tell you in an email that I'm a queer author and this is a queer autobiography of my life. So what in that case, I always just look at what kind of perspective that person is using. And queer community and queerness as a term is ever evolving. It is still evolving. There are no two genders, there are no 60 genders there. So we need voices that also evolve with time, that do not, when they are telling their own stories, when they are telling their queer narrative, they're not at the same time espousing ideas that have sort of, that have died back in the 90s, um, the way that author did that we were discussing yesterday. And that is, I think, very, very important when you are looking at queer narratives, in my opinion. And I love it when queer icons and queer writers who have been writing all these years, and um, and their new work reflects the changes that have come in the society, and not just changes in the sense that okay, now it's LGBTQIA plus, but also how language has changed. How I love it when authors are writing and their language doesn't really specify gender, you know, because they're trying to say we're not going to, you know, we're going to use a like language that encompasses everyone, each and everyone. So I really look into that whenever I'm reading queer manuscript. There haven't been, I think, a lot of great queer manuscripts that have come our way very recently. Whoever is watching this, if you are a queer writer, and if you are dynamic, and if you think, your writing packs a punch, to send your submissions to us. Our email is in our website.
Now you've
But
done it.
but we are very excited to be publishing Maya Sharma's new book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's a
which
very,
is
exactly.
which is what I was, which
Yeah.
is what I meant when I said, older writers and their language also changing with time and them reflecting, how ideas have evolved. I think that's amazing. And Maya Sharma has done that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
some predators are not learning at all. Yeah, Gitanjali.
yeah. I mean, that was like the appeal of Europress to me as well, because like I mean I'm not from Delhi, and a lot of like Delhi bourgeois culture did not really make sense to me. Even like Delhi bourgeois culture, and like it has its own language, it has its own culture, and it's very it's frankly transphobic. It's very casteist. It's very classist, and reading Maya Sharma and the books that Yoda publishes, that was one of the reasons that I applied. And I told Tishita and Tanya very clearly, like, I've been through your catalog. I really want in. So yeah, and this is like one of the strongest points, because there is entire queer discourses that's bloated with a certain kind of very rich queer person now.
Matriarch.
Yes, especially after 377.
That's a great coinage. Yeah. But actually, what Gitanjali is saying is very right. I think in terms of how when Ishita looks, because she does a lot of the hiring of new people for us. If someone writes into us and says, we've read this book and it happens to be from the LGBTQ list, and this is what I thought about it, and this is why I liked it, or whatever, I think Ishita immediately like sends me that CV first, saying, have a look at this. Because, and it's not something, I mean, for those who are watching, young people, and who want to suddenly like do this because they think, oh, this is the best way to. No, it's not something inorganic, or you can't force it. You have to really know the book. You have to know the list, you have to know the book. And we know when that young person has really bothered to look, or bothered to read our books, and it just immediately you feel, okay, this is someone you want to bring in to work with us.
You can tell when someone has looked at the list and has actually, whether it's through their studies or independently, if they've actually read the books, I can tell they've actually read them. And I can tell that this person will, gel well with the team. And knowing the list is loving the list. That is how it is with Yoda Press. So that means that you will be, when it comes to working on future books, you will, give it that energy, that time and effort that each and every book that we put into each and every one of our books. So, which is why, like Arpita already knows, those CVs go to her more quickly than others.
Which brings me to...
And it's something I appreciate completely, because one of the big problems, Saurabh, in our industry is that the diversity of the author pool has grown immensely over the last decade, but the diversity of the employee pool has not grown as much. We don't have enough, as we all know, don't have enough non-privileged, non-Savarna, non-South Delhi, straight, and all kinds of nons. We don't have enough such voices in working as editors, as publicists, as so that author pool diversity, beyond the point, it's not going to work. Beyond the point, it's going to start reflecting what's happening in the West. If you notice, there's a new article out about how women have taken over the fiction space, or women have made the fiction space their own. I think Guardian or something has published it. It's very true of the West, and one of the things it says is how it's a very white woman-oriented office space. The same thing is going to start happening. I mean, same thing is going to start reflecting here, because frankly speaking, the editorial end of our industry is a very upper class, elitist, Anglophone woman.
True.
And that has to change. It just has to change for it to really be truly diverse.
Correct. Okay. So, Arpita, what do you think the publishing industry should start, stop, or continue? So, first thing that they should continue, something that they should start doing, and something that they should stop doing. And that's the question for all of you. So, we can have fresh perspective and a perspective.
I think Tanya and Ishita will also have very interesting perspectives, because now they've seen the ecosystem quite a bit. And I'd also love to know what Gitanjali feels about it. He
Yeah,
has
it's the same
been
for
right now an
everyone.
outsider's
Yeah,
perspective.
we'll start with you. The question is same for
Yeah.
all of you.